The morning bell had just rung when the sound of laughter turned sharp, cruel, cutting through the chatter of students like a knife. Amina stumbled forward, her books spilling across the dusty schoolyard. The boys behind her snickered. "Where are you running, little village queen?" one sneered, kicking her notebook aside. She bent to pick it up, her hands trembling. Another boy grabbed her backpack and swung it over his head like a trophy. The crowd of students around them didn't move. They watched, whispering, recording on their phones, but no one stepped in. Amina's voice cracked. "Please, just give it back." The tallest boy, Malik, stepped closer. He looked down at her with a smirk. "You think you're better than us? Always reading, always acting like you're something special. You don't belong here." Amina's eyes darted around, searching for a teacher, anyone, but the school gate stood empty. Her books lay scattered like broken dreams. Then Malik's voice turned meaner. "You think that skin of yours makes you something? You're just dirt, Amina." The word struck harder than any slap. Her chest tightened, tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not in front of them. Not today. She reached for her book again. And Malik shoved her shoulder hard. She fell. The laughter rose. A moment later, silence sliced through it. A shadow fell across the group. A deep voice said, calm but heavy, "Pick up those books." The boys froze. Amina looked up, and her breath caught. Standing in the schoolyard, surrounded by stunned students, was Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself. Dressed simply, no guards around him, just his calm gaze that carried authority stronger than any army. Malik stuttered. "Yes, sir, we were just. Pick up those books." Traoré's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The boys scrambled, tripping over themselves to gather the books from the dirt. Traoré knelt beside Amina, his eyes softening. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. Amina shook her head, still stunned. "I'm fine, sir." He looked around, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Is this what your school teaches? That strength is found in mocking the weak?" No one spoke. Even the teachers who had hurried out stopped in silence. Traoré stood tall again. "I've seen brave men defend a nation," he said, "but I've also seen cowards who can't even defend a young girl. Which one are you?" The boys stared at the ground. Shame washed over them. He turned to Amina. "What were you reading?" She hesitated. "Biology, sir. I want to be a doctor one day." Traoré smiled faintly. "Then don't ever stop. Books are your weapon. Knowledge is your shield. Never let anyone take that from you." He faced the crowd once more. "Every time you laugh at someone's pain, you become smaller. Every time you stand up for what's right, you grow. Remember that." He handed Amina her notebook back. The dirt stains couldn't hide the pride in her eyes now. As he began to walk away, the same students who had laughed seconds earlier stepped aside quietly, their faces lowered. Amina clutched her books to her chest, watching the man disappear through the school gate. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. The bell rang again. But something had changed in the air, like the world had learned a lesson it could never unlearn. And in that dusty schoolyard, courage had found a new name. The next morning, the sun hung high over the red roof of the school when the principal received an unexpected visitor. Captain Ibrahim Traoré had returned. The news spread like wildfire. Students whispered down hallways, teachers straightened their ties, and the bullies from yesterday, Malik and his friends, stood pale near the gate, their nerves trembling. The principal rushed out, sweating slightly. "Mr. President, sir. What an honor. If I had known." Traoré lifted a hand. "This isn't about honor. It's about what I saw yesterday." The man fell silent. Traoré looked around. The same schoolyard, the same cracked walls, the same silence that had allowed cruelty to grow. He turned to the principal. "Gather the students." All of them. Within minutes, hundreds of students filled the courtyard. Some held notebooks, others hid their phones, unsure if they should record. The bullies stood near the front, eyes fixed on the ground. Amina stood off to the side, clutching her backpack. Traoré stepped forward, his boots crunching the dust. No microphone, no guards, only his voice, steady and sharp. Yesterday, he began, I saw something that broke my heart. He paused, scanning their faces. A girl, your classmate, was bullied because of her skin, because of her dreams, because she dared to be different. And all of you watched. The words fell like stones. No one moved. He continued, quieter now. I've faced men with guns. I've looked into the eyes of soldiers who wanted to destroy nations. But what I saw here was worse. He pointed to his chest. Because it came from here, inside. The courtyard stayed frozen. Wind brushed through the trees. Then Traoré turned toward Malik. Step forward. Malik's throat went dry. He looked at his friends, then stepped out, shaking slightly. You think strength is in your muscles, Traoré said, circling him slowly. But real strength is how you protect those who can't fight back. Yesterday, you failed that test. Malik's voice cracked. Sir, I was wrong. Traoré nodded. I know. And you will make it right. He gestured to the rest of the bullies. All of you, step forward. 4 boys joined Malik, their heads bowed. You will each stand here and tell this school what you learned. The first boy spoke, voice trembling. We thought it was funny, but it wasn't. It was cruel. Another added, we hurt someone who did nothing wrong. We're sorry. Malik looked at Amina. I shouldn't have said those words. You didn't deserve that. Traoré nodded once, then turned to the crowd. Now, all of you, listen. Respect is not just a rule. It's a choice. It's what separates humans from animals. He paused again. His tone softened. Amina stood alone yesterday, but today, she doesn't have to. I want everyone here to understand something, she is your sister. When one of you is insulted, all of you are insulted. When one of you rises, all of you rise. The students' faces changed, some embarrassed, some inspired. Traoré continued, in my country, I fight so no child grows up in fear. But that fight begins here, in schools, in hearts. He turned to Amina. Do you forgive them? Amina looked at the boys, her heart pounding. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, sir. I forgive them. A small smile touched Traoré's lips. That's courage greater than any soldier's. He looked back to the principal. From today, create a program, Students Helping Students. Every week, one act of kindness must be shared in this school. Make it a rule. The principal nodded quickly, tears in his eyes. Traoré placed a hand on Amina's shoulder. Keep studying, doctor, he said softly. Your dream is bigger than their hate. As he walked away, the courtyard erupted in applause, not forced, not polite, but real. Malik stepped toward Amina and offered his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. For the first time, the schoolyard felt different, lighter, braver, and finally, fair. By the next morning, the school wasn't the same. The dusty courtyard where Amina once fell was now alive with chatter, students speaking about respect, kindness, and courage. But something else had begun to spread faster than whispers, the video. Someone had secretly filmed the entire moment, Ibrahim Traoré standing before hundreds of students, making the bullies confess, and lifting Amina's courage before the whole school. By noon, the clip had exploded online. Within hours, hashtags began to trend. Hashtag stand with Amina, hashtag Traoré the protector, hashtag respect every child. People across Burkina Faso were watching, sharing, and commenting. The video wasn't just a school story anymore, it was a lesson to the world. In a small internet cafe, 2 college students replayed the clip again and again. Bro, look at his eyes, one said. He didn't even shout, but every word hit harder than a bullet. The other nodded. This is leadership. Not from an office, but from the heart. In the villages, parents gathered around radios. Teachers discussed the speech during staff meetings. In markets, shopkeepers spoke of how a leader had taken time to defend a schoolgirl. One old woman whispered to another, "Now our daughters can walk proudly." Someone finally told the truth. Meanwhile, Amina sat quietly in her small classroom. She still couldn't believe what had happened. Her classmates treated her differently now, not with pity, but with genuine respect. Even Malik had changed. He now walked beside her, carrying an extra notebook, trying to make up for his mistakes. During break time, Amina found a letter on her desk. It was handwritten, folded neatly. She opened it and read. You taught us something yesterday. Not because you fought back, but because you stood your ground. Keep being brave, Amina. You made all of us better. It was signed by nearly every student in her class. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, they weren't from pain, but pride. That afternoon, a reporter arrived at the school gate. I'm from the National News Network, she said. We'd like to speak with Amina. The principal called her to the office. Cameras, microphones, flashing lights, it all felt unreal. The reporter smiled. Amina, how does it feel to have the president himself defend you? Amina hesitated, then spoke softly. It wasn't just about me, she said. He taught all of us that respect doesn't need power, it needs heart. The journalist paused, impressed by her words. And what will you do next? Amina smiled faintly. Study harder. And maybe, one day, I'll help children like me who are scared to dream. That night, Traoré's office received hundreds of letters, some from students, others from parents. One message stood out, written in a child's handwriting. Thank you for showing that our leaders can care for us, not just rule us. Traoré read the note quietly. Then he said to his aide, this is why we fight, not just for land or gold, but for the dignity of our people. He ordered that more schools across Burkina Faso begin courage circles, weekly meetings where students could share problems, defend one another, and learn leadership from a young age. The story reached global media within days. African news channels aired headlines like Ibrahim Traoré, the leader who protected a schoolgirl. And Burkina Faso's president turns bullying into a national lesson. For once, Africa wasn't trending for crisis or conflict, it was trending for compassion. And at the heart of it all was one girl with dusty shoes, clutching her biology book, walking home as the sun set, her dreams stronger than ever. She didn't know it yet, but her courage had become the spark of a new movement, one that would soon reach every school in the country. A month had passed since that unforgettable day in the schoolyard. But for Amina, life was anything but ordinary now. Her story had crossed borders, shared by journalists, educators, and students from across West Africa. In Ghana, teachers replayed Traoré's speech in classrooms. In Nigeria, girls' groups painted murals of Amina holding a book, surrounded by words, "Knowledge is power." In Senegal, students launched their own respect circles, inspired by Burkina Faso's model. The world was changing quietly, one story at a time. One afternoon, as Amina sat beneath a tree, reviewing her biology notes, the principal approached her with an envelope. "This came for you," he said, smiling. Amina opened it carefully. Inside was a letter embossed with the national seal of Burkina Faso. She read aloud, voice shaking slightly. Miss Amina Diallo, you are invited to speak at the African Youth Leadership Summit in Ouagadougou. Your courage has inspired a generation. We would be honored to hear your voice. She froze. Speak? In front of people? The principal chuckled softly. Not just people, my child. Presidents, ministers, students from 10 countries. They want your story. Amina's heart pounded. She had never even spoken in class without trembling. How could she stand before a crowd of thousands? But then she remembered Traoré's words. Books are your weapon. Knowledge is your shield. She looked at the letter again. Maybe this was her battle now. The day of the summit arrived. The grand hall in Ouagadougou buzzed with excitement. Flags from across Africa hung from the ceiling. Journalists adjusted cameras. Young leaders filled every seat. And sitting in the front row, calm, proud, was Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself. Amina stood backstage, clutching her note cards. Her palms were sweaty, her stomach a storm. A volunteer whispered, "You're next." She took a deep breath. When she stepped onto the stage, the applause hit her like a wave. Thousands of eyes. Cameras flashing. Her heart felt too big for her chest. But then she saw him, Traoré, giving her a slow, reassuring nod. She began. Her voice wavered at first. I used to think being small meant being powerless. The hall fell silent. But I learned that courage doesn't mean fighting. Sometimes, it just means standing. She told her story, how the bullying started, how no one helped, how a leader had stepped in not to punish, but to teach. As she spoke, the crowd leaned in. Her confidence grew. I realized something that day. When one of us is hurt, it hurts all of us. And when one of us is lifted, it lifts everyone. A man in the back shouted, "Tell them, sister." The crowd erupted in applause. She continued, her voice now strong. If our leaders can defend students, then we must defend each other. If our teachers can teach respect, then we must live it. Africa doesn't need heroes in suits, it needs heroes in classrooms, on playgrounds, and in every home. When she finished, the entire hall stood up. Applause thundered. Some clapped, others cheered. Cameras flashed like stars. Traoré rose slowly and approached the stage. He smiled as he shook her hand. You spoke not for yourself, he said, but for millions. This is how nations rise, through courage like yours. Amina's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. For believing in me. He nodded. No, Amina, you believed in yourself. That's what changed everything. That night, her speech went viral across Africa. Clips of her standing confidently on the podium filled every platform. Headlines read: Amina Diallo, the girl who gave Africa its voice. And somewhere, in a quiet classroom, a shy little girl watched the video and whispered, if she can do it, maybe I can too. Weeks turned into months, and Amina's name was now known far beyond her little town. Her face appeared in magazines, her speech echoed in classrooms, and her message, respect is strength, had become the slogan of a growing youth movement across Africa. Schools began organizing events under her name. The Amina Initiative, a program where students stood up against bullying and supported education for girls. From Dakar to Nairobi, children were chanting, "One girl's courage can change a nation." But not everyone celebrated her rise. In the shadows of this new movement, some powerful people grew uncomfortable. Traditional leaders and old-school politicians whispered that the girl was being used, that she was too bold, that she was challenging the order. One evening, as Amina returned home from school, her mother met her at the gate, holding a folded newspaper. The headline read, Amina Diallo, Puppet of the West? Amina's smile faded. Why would they say that, she whispered. Her mother sighed. Some people fear what they can't control, my daughter. You're speaking truth, and truth makes enemies. Amina sat on the porch that night, her notebook open but her mind far away. The same kids who once mocked her were now cheering for her. But the voices on the radio, the critics online, they were louder, crueler. She felt that same sting of humiliation from months ago. For a moment, she wanted to disappear again. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from a private number. Never stop. The same people who resist you now will one day thank you. T. Her heart skipped, she knew who T was. Ibrahim Traoré. Days later, she was invited to a televised discussion about girls' education. Her opponents were experienced, older men, politicians, professors, and they looked at her like a child who had wandered into a war she couldn't win. One man sneered on air, "You're 16. What do you know about policy?" Amina met his gaze, calm and steady. "I know what fear feels like," she said. "And I know how silence helps it grow." The studio fell silent. She continued, "You don't need to be old to see injustice. You just need to have eyes, and courage to speak." The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. The man had no answer. By the time the show ended, Amina had won more hearts, and also made more enemies. That night, Traoré watched her on television from his office. A slow smile spread across his face. "She's learning faster than I thought," he said. His aide asked, "Should we provide her security? She's becoming a target." Traoré shook his head. "No. Give her freedom, not fear. But keep an eye on her, from a distance." Meanwhile, Amina poured her energy into her mission. She began traveling to nearby schools, meeting young girls, telling them her story face to face. At every stop, the crowd grew larger. One day in Bobo Dioulasso, hundreds of girls held up their notebooks and chanted, "We are the daughters of Amina. We are the sisters of courage." Tears welled up in her eyes. But in the same crowd, at the edge of the field, a group of men in dark clothes stood watching, expressionless. They weren't students. They weren't journalists. Something felt wrong. As Amina left the stage, one of her friends whispered, "Those men, they've been following since yesterday." Amina's heart raced. She remembered Traoré's warning, "Freedom attracts both light and shadow." That night, as she rode home, the car headlights flickered behind them, same black SUV, same distance. The fight for respect was no longer just about words. Now, it was about survival. The sun had barely risen over Ouagadougou when Amina's convoy approached the outskirts of the city. Her heart raced. The shadows from yesterday still lingered in her mind, the black SUV, the men following her, silent and threatening. Her driver tried to stay calm. "Don't worry, miss. We're close to the school." But Amina's instincts screamed otherwise. She had faced bullies, critics, and skeptics. But this felt different. Suddenly, the black SUV veered closer, its headlights glaring. The men inside didn't hide their intent, they accelerated. Amina's friends gasped. The driver slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. From the shadows of the nearby trees, a helicopter's blade sliced through the air, and before anyone could react, a convoy of vehicles blocked the road. And standing at the forefront, his gaze calm yet unyielding, was Ibrahim Traoré. The men in the black SUV skidded to a halt. Traoré stepped forward, his presence commanding every inch of space. "Step away," he said, voice low but powerful. The men tried to push past, but Traoré's aides surrounded them. One by one, the attackers realized they were outmatched, not just by force, but by authority. Amina's hands shook. She had never seen such a display of protection before. Traoré approached her slowly, offering a reassuring smile. "You're safe now," he said. Tears blurred her vision. I thought I'd never get here alive." He shook his head. "Courage isn't measured by fear. You've already proven that. Now let the rest of us shield you while you keep inspiring others." By mid-afternoon, news of the attempted intimidation spread across the nation. Headlines screamed, "Ibrahim Traoré protects young activist, courage meets leadership. Amina Diallo safe after threat, president steps in." The public response was overwhelming. People flooded social media with support, calling for stronger protections for students and activists. Girls and boys alike held up notebooks, placards, and banners. Courage is stronger than fear. That evening, Amina returned to the stage, but this time, with Traoré beside her. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed like stars. Traoré raised his hand, quieting the noise. "Today, we do not celebrate one girl or one leader. We celebrate every student who stands for justice. We celebrate every teacher who teaches respect. We celebrate a nation that refuses to let fear dominate. Then he turned to Amina. You showed all of us that one voice, when brave, can awaken millions. Keep speaking. Keep fighting. And know that you are never alone. Amina's voice trembled, but the strength behind it rang louder than ever. Together, we will protect every child's right to learn, to dream, and to walk without fear. The crowd roared. Teachers, students, parents, and even former skeptics clapped and cheered. In that moment, fear and intimidation were powerless. Courage and unity reigned. Weeks later, the story became a symbol across Africa. Schools adopted anti-bullying programs. Leaders were reminded that protecting children wasn't optional. Amina returned to her studies, walking to school each day with confidence, her books held high, her dreams unshaken. And sometimes, when she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, she remembered Traoré's words. You are never alone. Courage is contagious. And together, we rise. The girl who had once been pushed to the ground now stood taller than any fear. And in her courage, a nation found its heart.